A couple of months ago at the end of 2019, some friends and I were noticing just how many conferences scheduled for 2020 shared a similar conference theme, the theme of 2020 vision. And of course that makes sense. 2020 vision is vision where you can see clearly, you know what's coming, and that makes us feel good to know what's coming. We don't entirely like to be surprised, especially bad surprises. And of course there aren't too many years on the calendar where you can use that theme and have it make sense. 2020 vision, it made a lot of sense. But now that we're actually in 2020, it seems a little bit ironic that there were so many conferences that had that theme, because if there was a year that we did not clearly see coming, it's 2020. I don't think any of us knew that we would be in this position this far into 2020. In fact, if many of us knew that this is where we would be at this point in 2020, I think maybe we would have chosen to stay back in 2019 or go back to 2018 or 2017 or some other year, because there were so many things and difficult things that we just didn't see coming. And that was the case for the Israelites too, as they were on their way to the Promised Land. They didn't know that the Egyptians were going to come after them. They didn't know that they would feel trapped between the Red Sea and the Egyptian army. They didn't know the details of how God was going to get them to the Promised Land, the way that they were going to take, or they didn't know so many things, but there was one thing they did know, or at least one thing they could have known. At the very beginning of that day, God made a promise to them. As they were standing before the Red Sea and the Egyptian army was coming after them, he said, "Through all of this, I will gain glory for myself." In other words, God is going to look good in all of this, and the Egyptians will know that I am the Lord. And then he told them to go towards the Red Sea. But then they got to the Red Sea, and that's when they started complaining. That's when they got scared. That's when they were very afraid. And they started saying, if I knew that this was coming, if I knew that this was the place I was going to be in at this point in my life, I think I would have stayed back in Egypt. At least I knew what to expect back there. And do you know what God did then? That's not the moment he saved them. That's not the moment that they ended up safely on the other side of the Red Sea. They had to wait an entire night, all night, in order for that to happen. But there is something that God did in that moment. When they were scared, when they started complaining, when they were angry, God repeated his promise. He simply repeated his promise. He said, "I will gain glory through all of this, and the Egyptians will know that I am the Lord." And in so doing, he gave us an incredibly great recipe for what to do when you feel scared, when you're afraid, when you get angry, when you don't know what's coming, when life is so unsettling, either in the present or as you look out into the future. Find a promise. Hold on to a promise. The Israelites, with their eyes, they were not able to see exactly what the deliverance was going to look like, but with their eyes of faith, they had every reason to step forward with confidence because they had a promise. Find a promise and hold on to it. Maybe it's the one that you find in Ephesians chapter 3, where it reminds us that our God is able to do immeasurably more than all that we could ask or imagine. Maybe it's one of the many promises you'll find in Romans chapter 8, where it reminds us that if God did not spare his own son, but gave him up for us all, then how will he not graciously along with him give us all things, all that we need? I love that one, because it very directly points us to the reason we know that God will keep every one of his good promises. Because at the cross, he kept his most difficult promise, the one to love us when it was really hard, the one to forgive us when we didn't deserve it, the promise to give us heaven, though we didn't earn it. And if he kept the promise when it was hard, he's going to keep every other promise too. Find a promise from God. Hold on to it. Maybe share it with the rest of us so that we can hold on to it too. And then rest well tonight, my friends, because we know exactly what kind of God makes those promises, a God who has every intention of keeping them.